Healing with Spirit, welcome to the next episode of Triggers and Spiritual Medicine, where we look into the intersection of triggers, trauma, justice, sacred activism, and spiritual medicine as pathways to personal and collective healing. As always, this is commercial free, so please support our mission. Become a Patreon, memberships start for free, and it supports especially our domestic violence advocacy work and other stuff in the community. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. We are on YouTube and on most streaming platforms. And as always, we love your feedback. So please share, please comment, give us feedback. It helps us grow and it helps us curate content moving forward. So this month, we are going to be talking about how to move forward energetically. We're going to do a year in review, and I do have notes for myself because there's a lot to review moving forward in the month of December as we both close out the year and as we plan for moving into 2026. This year in 2025 has been a grand year of shedding, discernment, and mastering presence. And we're going to open this up and we're going to go into multiple different areas, including what we learned in 2025. We're going to address what maybe we didn't learn in 2025. The energies of the snake medicine, the energetic landscape of what we experienced moving forward in 2025. Also, the word for the year was discernment. I seem to be hearing that word more towards the end of this year than I did in the beginning of this year from other sources. So we're going to talk about all these things, and we'll have a few weeks left as we move into winter solstice. What does that mean? And how do we move forward? Knowing what we know, this is for some might be facing hard truths. For others, it might be what's next, right? So this is where, and I'm just going to start here and light my little candle so we have our little guidance from the spirit world. And I did it over there too. I just want to make sure I lit my candles over there. And we're just going to invite, even though I do have an outline, I do like to align with the spirits of the world. And I'm also hearing to start with a song that I am going to preface. I'm not a professional singer, and I don't profess to be, but part of my journey through reclamation work, ancestral reclamation work, reclaiming my life and health after 20 years of post-separation abuse in family courts, has been reclaiming my voice. And in August, when I went away for a workation, I was granted a song, and it really resonates, and for some reason, because I'm hearing a little raspiness in my voice, so please don't judge the quality of my singing. It's not about that. It's about the medicine, and Spirit has been very clear on having me share this message for those of you who can maybe use this as part of reclaiming your voice, as part of the frequency and vibration. And it goes, I release the pressure, I allow the flow, I release the pressure, I allow the flow. So that was a song, and I've never written a song before, but that when I was going through some stuff, and it came very quickly and the tone came very quickly. And that's when I know, okay, so this is where I know we are aligned, right? So the intensity of 2025, unfortunately, has been as predicted, both collectively, personally in our own lives. We have been building up to where we're at this year energetically for probably the last 10 years, if not more. And today, again, like I said before, we're going to be reviewing through the lens of spiritual medicine, through the Gokai, through presence, through discernment, through the teachings of the snake, and through what this season is calling us into as winter solstice approaches. And part of what I've been hearing as a repeated message throughout the year has been a deep remembering of the ways of our ancestors, those that flow in our veins, those that are 7 to 10 generations back, those that prepared us for these times, that survived times like this before. And they are asking for us to slow down, get out of the head, and really listen to their guidance and their messages. Get off of the conspiracy theories, folks. I love you. Get off the conspiracy theories. There's a lot of, one of the messages I got early on in 2025 was, be careful of the intuitive messages you get. This is part of discernment, because some of it isn't coming from spirit. Some of it is man-made. So take that for whatever it's worth. Use and compost what serves you and what doesn't serve you. But as we enter the energetic landscape for 2025, this was the year of the snake. If you follow the Chinese zodiac, some of the core symbolism includes things like shedding what no longer is alive in us, right? We are moving in from Samhain season into winter solstice, so that we are in prime time of shedding those last layers. It's almost like giving birth. When a snake sheds, they're almost like in this paralysis state as the skin sheds. They're actually very vulnerable. So this is about turning inward, the wisdom beneath the skin, the ancestry and the underworld, the regeneration, right? The rebirth, the cyclical transformation, the medicine of death and rebirth. These are all part of it, right? And, it was interesting because the beginning of the year, I've been together with my husband for 10 years, for those who don't know. And even though we got married this year on summer solstice, yay, me and him. But it was interesting because he built a deck by himself, and he did it without a lot of the tools that most people use to build decks. And one of the things I found quite interesting was that he went, after he was done, he got upset because he's like, Laura, there's a bunch of snakes underneath the boards. And I go, are you actually afraid of snakes? And he's like, yes. It was the first time I actually learned that, because I had been talking to him and playing with the snakes ever since I kind of moved in or been dating. There's been an increase of snakes, and there were 2 or 3 different species of snakes underneath these boards. And I was like, Arnie, this is a blessing, actually. This is the medicine, because when I first met him, the soil, literally, there were like no insects in the soil. It was dead. The soil was dead. There was no wildlife in his yard, even though we live in the city, a very small piece of land. And I've noticed over the last 10 years, a lot of that has been coming back. And even this year, we have everything from the groundhog to a cardinal nest to a house wren that built a nest inside the apple tree. And to me, that is what it's about. But we have forgotten. We have gotten out of alignment collectively. And so this is why I have an outline, because I'm going on my little tangents. So one of the things that this year has asked us to confront or what are we clinging to? What are we clinging to, for instance? Is it old patterns, old stories? Is it attachments? Are we clinging to the fear of change, survival strategies, right? Are we clinging to, the false narratives, the conditioning that we have been taught the old colonizer, patriarchal, church indoctrination, all those things, all those systems that have supported oppression under the guise of it doesn't, right? Under the guise of maybe capitalism, right? So when we really sit, and don't take my word for it. This is where when we start unpacking our own inner biases, we start shedding those inner biases, those inner false truths that we have been conditioned most of our lives, then we can hear clearly the voices of our ancestors, the voices of the spirits of the land, the water, the air, the fire, right? And when you do, then you go, oh, okay, so there's a bigger picture to all of this, right? So what are we clinging to? Is it false identities? Geez, I was taught I needed to be a wife with a white picket fence and live in this particular town and drive this particular car and have this particular job. Well, how is that working for you? Are you clinging to relationships that were misaligned from the get-go, from our truth, right? Are we clinging to ways that we have abandoned our bodies, especially those who identify as women, regardless if you have a womb or without a womb? We have been conditioned to be a Martha Stewart and overperform, and that when you're overwhelmed, that's a sign of like you're doing something right. Who told us that that was okay? These are things like I've seen with clients, like for instance this week, I've noticed like when I was the featured speaker and spiritual medium at the First Spiritualist Church of Salem, Massachusetts recently, and I asked everybody, how many of you are feeling fear? And almost everybody rose their hand, or overwhelmed, almost raised their hand. And these people, a lot of them are already in the spiritual communities. They're already practicing either healing arts or yoga, meditation, or maybe they do psychic or medium stuff. But I want to really invite you in, because I've seen a lot of resistance this year with folks in that community, not from this particular church, but in the community in general, with the resistance of really employing toxic capitalist structures and calling it spiritual healing. And those energies are actually misaligned. And so I really want to invite you to really unpack and really take personal responsibility. There are a couple podcast episodes prior where I talk about how do we deal with our triggers as a 4-step process that I use, that I also use with my clients, and how do we move through this. And I encourage you to go look it up, where we employ the stop, pause, breathe, what's the action step, okay? And I encourage you to do that. So the collective themes that I have witnessed and we kind of predicted for 2025 is the truth telling. And how many of us, like right now we're looking at the Epstein files, right? And I can't imagine, like I'm a survivor of, just as a precursor, I label these things differently because I see them as differently. I was sexually assaulted at the age of 12 or 13. My brain keeps going in between the two age groups by a guy who was 19. I wasn't actually penetrated, so I see that more as like a sexual assault, and actually by two men. But I didn't lose my so-called virginity to a rapist at 15. And I didn't talk about it until I was in my mid-40s. So not even within the last 8 to 10 years. So I have so much admiration for all the Epstein victims that have stood up as the truth tellers, regardless of, like, I get, because I've experienced it and I've witnessed it with women that I've worked with, the level of retaliation, the threat, and the destruction that can happen in their lives by standing in the face of truth. And that, in a way, is what is happening. Those that are facing in truth, we've seen it even with Gaza. Those that are speaking truth to power in Gaza are being eliminated, literally. Even their social media is eliminated with no reasons, okay? So, and there's no violation. So I'm just going to clear that up. I'm being very careful in how I approach this. And so when we face the truth telling that doesn't agree with what we've been conditioned to believe, whether through the religious institutions that we grew up with, or the family systems that we grew up with that were also indoctrinated into those systems, or other sources, right? Like I always talk about Andrew Tate and how the rise of sexual assault and everything else has gone up, and how many boys have been influenced by men like him over the last, just think about it. If you're under 25, more than half of their life has been influenced by men like Andrew Tate or other very well-known, highly powered, elected rapists, convicted rapists, okay? So these are hard truths. And what I'm witnessing is those that are facing it and being like, oh my God, like the wool just came off of the eyes, the Hoover Dam just got pulled down. And for others, they're like, nope, I'm still digging my heels in instead of facing the truth, because the idea of that what we have been taught could possibly been wrong is challenging for a lot of people. And I've actually experienced an immense amount of grief seeing this with people in the healing communities that are digging their heels in and supporting systems of oppression and structures of oppression that are abusive, that are contrary to the very things they claim they believe in. So this has been a time of self-reflection. The shadow material around safety, autonomy, and power. I know personally, I am and I'm not saying, by the way, that I am perfect. I am in no way saying that I am perfect. I am very well aware of the work I still need to do in this world. I at least know where the instruction manual is. Okay, that's the difference. I know that safety in healing spaces needs to be a priority. Perfect at it? No. Okay, but I work towards making sure that safety is a priority. What I have seen as a problem, for instance, in spiritual communities, and this is where for those who run groups or circles, okay, I want to really invite you into this. I have been really sad that some who run circles get triggered instead of leaning into something that I'm actually helping them grow into. And that is really understanding you cannot have diversity and inclusion without safety being a priority. And I've already talked about this again on multiple podcast episodes, as well as on social media on the Healing Trauma Through Spirit pages. Please look that up. The other aspects that we have been confronted with are boundaries in relationships and community spaces, the body leading the way, right? So there's a lot of dualities that are still happening. Those that are getting it, and we're aligning and we're trying to, and it's not pretty. When we uncloak what we've been conditioned, it is not pretty. It is not easy. And I want to say thank you for doing it, right? Anyway, right? Thank you for saying yes to healing the hard stuff anyway, because you are the future ancestor you wish you had. You are the future ancestor to your great grandkids. When you unpack all these things, you are helping future generations, not just yourself, your family structures, all of it, okay? But the boundaries, we've seen both out of learning about boundaries, and we've also seen this year those that, because of leadership in our country right now, that lack boundaries, that lack consent, that lack due process. I don't have to respect your boundaries. I don't have to respect your yeses or your nos. I can just do what I want because I can. So we're seeing this polarity and shift. And this is where the discernment, the lessons in discernment of knowing which side are you finding yourselves weaving towards. And one of the things I heard, because I've seen some sisters that I love and had a lot of respect, and unfortunately I've lost respect for, that have really, since the new regime, and again, these people call themselves healers, have resorted to name calling, insulting, and belittling. And that is very sad to me because that just says that you have fallen prey to the predator. And I'm trying to hand you a life preserver, and you're tossing it back and seeing me as the evil one. And that is very sad. And I can't help those individuals. I'm just trying to help those and inspire those that have either new at all. And then here comes the snake as the rise of the feminine. This, the energetic imprints, we are here. If you are listening and you have been born to alchemize what we're experiencing. This isn't just something that's happening in the US, like, 4, 10, 20 years, maybe even 100 years, 400 years. This is a 12,000 year cycle. And it really starts with the erasure of the goddess and understanding that when we worship the goddess, our ancestors understood this clearly. Without balance with the goddess, meaning our Mother Earth and Father Sun, and understanding that balance and worshiping and understanding the power of women, our wombs. Like, women have been conditioned to shame our menses instead of understanding that that is the seat of our power. So this is what the snake, the feminine, this year is here to remind us. And this is why we're seeing a lot of attacks, especially from white men attacking white women, brown women, especially immigrant women. Okay, we're hearing a lot of horror stories of even black and brown women going to deliver babies at the emergency rooms and they're being turned away, intentionally turned away. Like, this is the fear of the collective, and we need to unite with all these women that are facing these things, not turning them away, not shaming them. And we need to do the same thing for the Epstein survivors. I did a TikTok call to all survivors of sexual assault to share your story in support of the Epstein survivors. And if we start talking and stop shaming other women who are also assaulted, we not only invite healing, we invite community back that has been lost, especially since the burning times of witches. White women especially think they know community. They only know community when things are light and love, and we have champagne and wine and we do fun things together. But when it comes to one of us falling, we typically will find, I don't have time, my life is busy, oh, I'm so sorry, I got Timmy's practice today, I wish you well. And what I've learned in other communities, rooted with the leaders of elders that support communities, that and women that are in black, brown, indigenous communities especially, that when one falls, we all come together And then when we celebrate, we all come together. That's what community structures are. This is part of the medicine that we're here to unpack and relearn. Relearning what community looks like. And this is what the snake is also here to show us. The feminine as energy, by the way, not as gender or sexuality. We're talking about the feminine, the reproductive energies of Mother Earth, the penetrative energies of Father Sun. Okay, this is also the snake medicine, by the way, is deeply connected to the feminine principle in its energetic form, including things like intuition, presence, embodiment, cyclical knowing, and the ability to sense truth beneath the surface. Why do you think Christianity in the Garden of Eden made evil the snake? Why do you think in Ireland that had no snakes, but yet St. Patrick drove out the snakes? It drove out feminine leadership in councils and battle. It drove out the worship of the feminine, the goddess, which is could be also construed as nature, Mother Earth. Also honoring the mother who gives life, the grandmother that holds wisdom, the storytellers. All of that is what has been driven out. And we are here because guess what? It flows in our veins. This wisdom flows in our veins. We just have to remember. We have to remember, which requires us to slow down, to really start practicing. This is not going to happen overnight. This is a daily, intentional practice. I've been doing this daily, intentional practice for 20 years. And honestly, I feel like I'm just now getting it. I am just now getting it. Even though I've been dabbling in and out and weaving for over 53 years, my whole life, I just now feel like I am just now understanding it. This is what the feminine current rising is about. It's not about women versus men, but it's a polarity, a reclaiming balance in the world that has been overrun by domination, by control, by oppression and suppression and fear for thousands of years. And your soul said yes to these times as an alchemist. There is something within you that said yes to be part of the larger puzzle to create the change that this world desperately needs. Which goes into the next piece, reclaiming what has been demonized through colonization and religious indoctrination. In indigenous, ancestral, and pre-colonial cultures, the snake was revered. There's a reason, think about it. There is a reason why the white male dominator, the European, Eurocentric kind of Rome, goes all the way back to the Romans, maybe even pre that, of domination, of destroying indigenous cultures because they were afraid of their magic and their power and their connection as communities, as woven structures in the earth. When they wanted to dominate for control and money and greed under the guise of capitalism, okay? And under the guise of, well, we need to convert them because they're savages, right? You know this, right? And so this is the seat. The snake is really a seat of spiritual power, a guardian of thresholds, a teacher of deep transformation. So in the Chinese zodiac, the snake carries the wisdom, the intuition, the refinement, and the spiritual perception. The contrast with, the colonized narratives really has to do with Christian theology, as I mentioned before, demonizes the snake as temptation, as danger, as wrongdoing, and patriarchal structures branded the snake and therefore the feminine as something to fear. If you're noticing, we are seeing pastors and churches in Christian churches preaching that women are to be feared, that we are demons, and that we need to be subdued and forced in, as reproductive parties to elevate the white man. It's happening, folks. We can no longer put our heads in the sand, especially white folks who may never have had to face these systems before. So I get it that it's like, oh my God, it's shaking up your whole world. Life has been good up until then. Imagine what it's been like for folks that aren't you, that don't have your education, that don't have your privilege and your economic standing. So this is where, like I've always said, none of us can fully heal unless all of us are healed. None of us are free unless all of us are free. None of us are liberated until all of us are liberated, not just for the white privileged. Okay, so this was a strategic eraser of intuitive power, feminine spiritual authority, and embodied wisdom. And it really kind of, for me, invokes this kind of predator-prey wound and the distortion of polarity, or like what we say in the domestic world. There's like, you can pull it up on the internet. All you gotta do is Google power control wheel dynamic. Okay, this is what we're talking about. And domestic violence advocates understand this power dynamic very intimately. Okay, it's really, when we see it there, it's really also how it shows up in the institutions. It's everywhere. And the collective fear of the snake, which I find quite interesting, mirrors the societal fear of trusting our inner wisdom. We have been conditioned to do all of our fixing externally. Medication, you tell me what to do. I need this. You need to tell me who I'm going to marry, right? Instead of really trusting our inner guidance system, our inner GPS. It also mirrors the societal fear of feminine wisdom, spiritual authority outside of institutions, people who cannot be controlled. Remember, people that cannot be controlled are deemed a threat, right? Women were deemed a threat. We still are deemed a threat. Indigenous communities are deemed a threat, right? Because they're rooted. You can't control them. Healers, midwives, oracles, medicine women. Think about the burning times of witches. We are in these times right now where this stuff is still playing out, what happened then. The body, when we go in and align, we have a neck here that connects our mind to our body. And when we understand that the mind has a different intelligence and the body has a separate intelligence, and then we have that electrical current that naturally occurs, that soul piece that flows and connects both, only then when we listen to the body, I always say, is like the speaker to the soul. That's the source of your power, your source of your truth. And when women, with or without wombs, we used to say that with the wombs, because the womb is the seat of your power, it's the seat of your intuition, okay? And yet we've been conditioned to hate that part of our body. We're seeing record rates of hysterectomies and all these things being ripped out. Why? I've learned that personally, I was told twice by 2 separate doctors to have a hysterectomy. And guess what? 15 years later, I still have my uterus. Because when I connected that the trauma, the generational wounds, the lack of fear of my own power was rooted into why my uterus was sick, when I worked on that, my uterus healed. Boy, isn't that empowering? This year was also a big year that forced humanity to confront some really hard truths. Predatory systems, predatory behavior, predatory structures, and the ways we've internalized these dynamics, both individually, collectively, how we either knowingly or unknowingly dig our heels in and support these structures, okay? The difference between now and then, we've always been doing it, is that we're seeing it. We can actually see it happening and be like, oh my gosh, this is the discernment piece again, right? We're discerning and saying, oh my gosh, and then how much of it, have maybe we played a part of that in the past? And it's not to shame you. It's to understand that we have to face these hard truths in order to free ourselves of these burdens, right? The snake medicine also invited us to transmute the fear into sovereignty. Again, something the patriarchal structures, fear is sovereignty. The snake as initiation into power, shedding, return. This year was not just about letting go and shedding. It was about remembering what was stolen, erased, suppressed, or demonized. The snake asks us to reclaim intuitive authority, trust the body as the oracle, shed the colonial conditioning, return to ancestral knowing, break obedience to oppressive structures, and reclaim the feminine seat to power without apology. This is the deeper medicine that we have been shown throughout 2025. The next piece really addresses that collective trauma temperature. And oh my gosh, has it been sky high? I know for me, I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I felt like I was managing it very well, especially over the last 6-7 years, until 2025. And what I've noticed, it isn't my stuff, like my abuser, that stuff that I'm having the challenges with. It's the collective, feeling the collective trauma, seeing folks that call themselves healers or spiritual teachers or people that are supposed to support communities actually do the opposite of what they preach. And that really made me feel sad. Again, as I mentioned before, the political climate and the resurgence of oppressive systems, there's the amount of manipulation, we call this coercive control in the domestic violence communities. And I really feel like 2025 also, I must add, 2025 was really a schooling on what coercive control and Darvo tactics look like from the White House. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, and in how many of us, because we see it in domestic violence too, when a victim discloses, and then how the community sometimes rallies around, the perpetrator, right? Because the perpetrator is very good at manipulation. It's good at pay for play type of thing. And the victim is just like, wait. And we just see them as disheveled, as chaotic, and not really understanding that these are part of the broken systems, right? Goes into that other piece I talked about, remembering about communities and how we supported communities, because those old communities that our ancestors had that have been stolen from us, we knew how to support each other and address the abusers in the group. We did. And they were addressed. They weren't given power. Okay? The impact on women, survivors, healers, LGBTQ folks, and marginalized communities, and how the nervous system has been affected. So it's been important that we remain grounded in what the body knows, not in the sensationalism. That has been some of the lessons, that we stay grounded. We know what's happening. We don't need to be glued to the TV or to social media influencers that are getting paid to really sway narratives. That we don't need that, because our ancestors are here to guide us and tell us the truth. And it's not what you think. Regardless, this is not about party affiliation. It's bigger than that. All right. And one of the things that has always helped me, and I talked about this at the church sermon the other day, and in the group I ran the other day as well, where how powerful the Gokai is in Reiki, and how I have witnessed over the last 10 years, most Reiki teachers don't even teach the Gokai anymore. They don't even know the Gokai. They don't use it. And yet in the indigenous Japanese culture, in the roots to Reiki, it was the spiritual medicine. The result of what you got by putting your hands onto somebody was the result of you needing to work with the Gokai and working on your internal system. So everything I do, including this podcast, is always rooted in the Gokai. And in Japanese, it's Kyo daki wa ikaruna shimpai suna kanchaste gyo hagame itumi shitsatsune. And I wrote a whole book, by the way, this book right here, Secrets to Healing. And it's an invitation to healing trauma and other root causes of chronic illness using the Reiki Gokai. And I give 9 case studies. But, Kyo daki wa is just for today. That's the teacher about presence. How presence can actually become survival. I'm mastering that. The body as our compass. And the antidote to chaos. The Ikaruna Shimpai Suna, Ikaruna. I'm having my little moment, so please bear with me. That's do not anger, right? So, and it's not about not anger. And I even talk about it in the book of like how even in Japan, there's not just one word for anger. There's 2 words for anger, ikaruna and okuruna, because it just depends on the energy and the fire behind the type of anger that we're talking about. All right. So it's not about suppressing the anger. It's about alchemizing it. It's about facing it. It's about addressing it. It's about what are the root issues. And the snake medicine, the anger is fuel for transformation, reaction versus righteous boundary, right? And so I go into, again, this in more detail. I mean, understand, I wrote a whole book on this. And the Shinpai Suna piece, do not worry. I know that was hard for me, coming as a trauma survivor. But this year it's about, when we listen to this, it's about nervous system stabilization. And it's not about bypassing, by the way. It's about allowing whatever is to flow through. Worry as a collective overwhelm and returning to the moment. Again, getting present, Kyo daki wa. Getting present, working through it, alchemizing it, honoring it for its teaching, and now it doesn't carry the burden. It doesn't continue to repeat in cycles, right? Kansha stay. Be grateful. That was hard. As somebody as a trauma survivor, I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to be grateful when I've lost my house, I lost my retirement account, I lost my business, and the courts are not allowing me to be free from an abuser. They're forcing me into a relationship with this abuser. And you took away my kids and gave them to an abuser. Like, what am I supposed to be grateful for? And it's really about gratitude as orientation, not bypassing. It's finding gratitude within the collapse. It's finding gratitude for the sake of being grateful. And that was a hard lesson. I go into more detail about that again in the book. And then the 5th one is Gyo Hagame. Do your duties fully. This is a devotion to practice. This is daily. It's all in the micros, not in the macros. It's the devotion and practice. It's the discernment about what your true identities are and what your true duties are. It's about, are you praying every day? Are you practicing gratitude every day? Are you practicing presence every day? Are you being the student and learning and saying, geez, I have to unpack these stories? Are you doing it on the regular? Are you really going to embody that peace? It's the quiet daily work that has moved this year forward for me. That is what's helped me keep me from full relapse into my post-traumatic stress disorder. So this daily practice and understanding that, yes, I need to go for a walk every day to ground. I need to talk to the trees, the water. I need to talk to my ancestors. I need to light a candle if I don't have a fireplace and sit with the fire and ask for its guidance. Because the fire is a being, it's a living being. That's why it can be destructive. And it also can be transformative, right? Ito ni shinsetsu ni. Be kind to others. And what I have found, and this year has really been exemplary at this. You cannot call yourself kind to others if you haven't mastered being present, dealing with your anger, your worry, gratitude, and doing your duties fully. You cannot be kind to others if you haven't unpacked, because when you're triggered, it's going to be an automatic response, right? kindness as disruption, kindness without self-abandonment, community as spiritual medicine. It's about doing our work. And it ties it all back to, again, what I talk about, bringing the science. I have 9 case studies in the book, Secrets to Healing. The Gokai is the one thing that I've seen, again, teachers not teaching, really emphasizing. And I get it, because I did the same thing when I had amazing Western Reiki teachers. I really correlate this to how we've colonized Reiki, and we are missing the magic. And so since I've been studying with my teachers in Japan, I'm really seeing it much clearer, and like even where I was bypassing, not realizing it. So this isn't like a shame thing or calling out Reiki teachers, because I did it too, okay? The book serves as one, as to help Reiki teachers reel that back in and to incorporate it into your classes. And it also will help the average person in, how do I embody this? And how do I use it in my daily life? And the next piece that I want to talk about is the discernment, which is the word for the year. How has discernment emerged throughout in 2025? How has it shown up? Again, as I talked about, we talked about how it's shown up in discernment, and how we insert boundaries and in our relationships, and how we manage our energy, how we say no without guilt, how we name truth even when inconvenient, how we stand in our truth, knowing that it's not harming somebody. As long as you're standing in your truth, that doesn't harm somebody else, then you're standing in your truth. If you're standing in your truth and digging in your heels on your so-called truth that actually harms somebody else, then you're really not standing in truth. You're actually refusing to stand into the truth. So you really need to have that discernment and understand what that looks like. And what has discernment helped us shed this year? It has helped us shed old identities, roles that no longer serve, energetic entanglements, scarcity narratives, the need to confront belonging. And one of the things that just happened to me recently is I had a very profound dream, which I won't go into details because I'm keeping it sacred. But it did include, a childhood home, some other symbolism, a fire that when I went to it was a blue flame. And to make a long story short, it was really about how I am personally moving into a new phase of my being, and how I'm integrating the old self and the new self. So pay attention to those little cues, whether from spirit, from nature in your walks, from wildlife that shows up, from impromptu songs that might show up. All these things might be showing you how discernment has helped you, and then showing you where you need to level up, right? Now, discernment and preparing for 2026. This is where I'm going to say it is, again, a little bit every day, not big once a month or whatever. It's everyday practices. Every day practicing presence, every day practicing connecting to your body, every day practicing prayer work. And I'm not talking religious institution, I'm talking about prayer work the way your ancestors did prayer work. And really understanding that this is a muscle, not a destination. It's a way of living that expands through time. Like the message I got about how I was weaving and I'm changing and emerging into as an elder, the timing was, I'm not there yet, but probably by spring is going to show some more clues for me. So I'm just in it like a curious child having an adventure of, wow, I've waited 54 years to basically feel sovereign for the first time, and to really embody that personally, professionally, and in my environment. And I can't wait for that magic, okay? And that's what we're talking about. And this is where we're approaching again, as I mentioned, we're still kind of in that Samhain season. The veil is very thin. We're moving into the womb of winter. That's the feminine power cycle. That's the Kaliak cycle, the one goddess that we have demonized again, called her the Hag Witch. We've been fearful of her, but she is the storm, but she's also the embodiment of the stone, the ancestors, the elder, the wise woman, the wise elder, the grandmother, all of these archetypes. This is what we're moving into as we approach winter solstice. It's entering into the deep root, where it's the darkest of night, the energetics of the season. This is where, again, we're going to be entering the womb of the dark, where animals go into the womb of the earth to hibernate. Okay, they literally go into the womb of the earth. Nothing grows in the dark. Nothing grows in the light, sorry. Everything grows in the dark. Nothing grows in the light. Seeds, plants have to start in the dark before they pierce the soil. Babies don't grow external of the uterus, they grow internally. All life starts in the darkness. That's where we grow. And so the descent, you need to see this descent as we move through this year, to the end of the year, into winter solstice and into the winter, is the descent as initiation, where you want to focus on rest, restoration, and integration. And it does not mean bypass real life events that are happening. It means sacred activism, understanding that when we quiet the mind, we actually know what steps to take. And we know which organizations to support, because we will have clarity and we will have wisdom and we will have sovereignty and power to know how to move through the oppressive powers that are happening as we speak. So what does this moment ask of us right now? Slow down, integrate, find time and space in your environment, create a mini altar, like what I have here, and light a fire, quiet your mind, offer a prayer, practice Gokai, Kyodakiwa, Karunashin Paisuna, Kanchaste Gyo Hagame, Intodi Shinsatsuni, and open yourself to receive whatever information that might be presenting at the time. Journal. Do fire initiations. Okay? Honor also where you're at as the student. Especially, this is for white folks, I really want to make this clear. If you're practicing practices that aren't your own culture, make sure you're honoring that culture. That includes like yoga and Reiki. If you're not honoring the culture that it derives from and honoring the people and the indigenous people that it derives from, you're culturally misappropriating. And you're part of the problem. So there's like subtle little things that we can do, right? And how we move forward. It doesn't mean, we have to change and overhaul the whole thing. It's how we add a little bit here and there. But we don't know unless we slow down. And we also clear the residue. The reason why we slow down is to clear the residue, is to invite the rest. Our ancestors understood this very clearly. Ground, for instance, through the Gokai practices, all right? Find a credible, which also in the book, if you want to learn Reiki, I have 2 different topics on how to find a quality Reiki teachers, questions to ask, things to consider when finding especially a trauma-informed Reiki teacher. So those are things that can help you. Listen to your ancestral guidance. Find a teacher who might be able to help you, one that is rooted, one that has actually done this level of deep work. If they haven't, they can't not help you with things they haven't done themselves. They just can't. We're entering this liminal window, when we think of like solstice into the new year. Okay? This is not manifesting season as we have been co-opted, conditioned, set your New Year's intentions and rah. This is composting season. Compost. What is dying so something new can grow? And the compost are nutrients. What is gestating? But maybe you're just not ready to name. Maybe you don't even know what to name it. And that, you need to be okay with that, by the way. So as we prepare for 2026, the path ahead, these are some potential themes that right now I'm kind of feeling into as we speak. Around reclamation, especially around ancestral reclamation, community-led healing that is safe, spaces that know how to honor safety and know how to not allow predatory people into spaces that could be preyed upon, all right? Truth-telling is going to continue. The returning to the body as the oracle is going to deepen. The choosing ease without self-betrayal is going to deepen. Because and I want to just clarify on that. It's not about ease as a form of bypassing or ignoring the oppression and the harms and the wars and whatever else is happening. It's about stop using systems of fight or flight or overwhelm as a trauma drive to make you think like that's what success looks like. Okay? What I have found is when we slow down and we listen, things align, they pop. And so we're moving into those systems. I notice when I drive, I can see the amount of people who are still asleep just by the aggressive, angry, violent way that they drive. And it seems to be really off the charts right now. So please be mindful when you get behind, a 10-ton vehicle and you engage in rage behind the wheel, okay? And self-righteousness, all right? Really dial that down, okay? Because insurance premiums are skyrocketing because of these people's idiocracies. We really need to challenge that. And I'm going to give you some reflective questions to think about, to stop and pause as we move through the season of change. And I want you to think of, the first question is, what did you shed this year that you are not picking back up? What did you shed this year that you are not picking back up? And you might want to press pause on this episode so you can write these questions down and journal. And then you can kind of go back or write them all down and then journal, however you see fit. But press the pause so you can compost these questions. The second question, what is discernment asking for refinement? So what areas in your life of discerning, of how you're discerning, needs maybe some refinement? Question number 3. What truth surfaced that you can no longer unknow? What truth surfaced that you can no longer unknow? And this takes bravery, especially if we're talking, decades of conditioning and indoctrination into certain belief systems and structures that, especially like my friends that were raised in certain Jewish Zionist faiths, I cannot imagine what it's like to feel betrayed by the very institutions that taught you certain things, only to be the very thing of those who lead that to harm millions of folks under the guise of freedom. That is a hard truth that we cannot unknow anymore, right? And the same thing for folks that might be in probably any of the religions, because I feel like all three, one of the messages I've been hearing with all three religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and I don't really have the bandwidth to go into deeper of this. All I know is for some reason, I feel like whatever's happening in Turkey with the excavations, like with Noah's Ark, with like Göbekli Tepe and a few other sites that go back 10, 12,000 years, I feel like it was all one faith, and something happened And I feel like it's a power struggle that became very egoic. And I feel like there's a reckoning happening with all three religions that needs to be addressed. So please be mindful of your own faith if you follow into one of those, to really look at, and it doesn't mean whether or not you believe in Jesus or any of that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the structures. So really looking at the power dynamics and structures, because all three main religions are having major problems right now. The fourth question, what are you committed to tending quietly through the winter? What are you going to be tending to? What wounds, maybe what communities, maybe you're going to be tending, really a commitment to unpacking conditioning. Like, what are you tending to quietly through the winter as we move, right? So that we're setting the intentions from now until we move into spring equinox in bulk and spring equinox. So we're talking at least through February, March, where seeds that you're going to be planting. Okay, if they haven't been planted already for the fall, because some things you plant for the spring and the fall, right? Number 5, what spiritual practices will anchor you into presence in 2026? So I've noticed like a lot of people say, well, I'm highly organized and I need to do this and I need to do that. And I'm sitting there and I'm witnessing their mind going beep, beep, beep. And they go, well, I think I'm diagnosed bipolar or I'm ADD. And I'm going to really caution you all to not use those labels. What I am witnessing, and I am not a licensed therapist, I'm not a licensed doctor, so I'm prefacing that. And I can refer to maybe Dr. Jessica Taylor, who is an expert at unpathologizing people's trauma, is that the overwhelm, the need to overperform, is burning our circuits because they're not in alignment, and it might be presenting as ADD or bipolar, or you might be sensitive to certain energetic structures like the solar flares and the solar cycles, and it can present as bipolar or ADD. And I really want to caution you into those labels and really dive into, well, I'm just this and I'm that, and it just is. And I'm going to keep challenging you on those labels, because is it really that, or is it because you're trying to still live by old ways of being that you've outgrown, and your body's trying to signal you to slow down, and you still want to fight it as my phone is ringing. So that is what we need to really look into as we move into. So what spiritual practices will anchor you into presence? How are you going to anchor it? And for me, it's in the subtleties, like my hands are on the wheel and I am driving. When I'm washing the dishes, I'm not thinking about other things. My hands, I'm washing and I'm feeling the water, and maybe I'm doing a prayer of the water purifying this and helping to cleanse any toxic chemicals that might have been, on the plates or whatever it is. Those are the types of things that I'm talking about. Now, what do we need energetically between now and the end of the year? These are the things that I was really thinking about moving forward as we move into the end of the year. These are things that even for myself I am doing as well. Clear your field, declutter. Declutter your home, declutter your mind. Let go of stuff that is just consuming where you can't get clear. Salt baths, because I do anticipate we're going to have still increased space weather affecting our physical bodies, especially. So we're going to need to ground and use more electrolytes to help us balance these energies. And that really has to do with not so much even with the space weather activity, but with the Earth's weakening field. So we're getting about 30% more particles that are affecting our health and our bodies and our frequency. Reiki self-treatment. Okay, I do this every day, every morning, every evening, and maybe sometimes throughout the day. And it's all how I'm embodying it. How am I living? As a friend of mine said, How are we walking a living prayer? How are we living from a place of prayer every day? Are we honoring that from a place of prayer every day? Journaling for emotional release, plant allies for grounding and clarity. Call in your energy home. Like, what is your calling in your energy? Stop giving it out, knowing again that's a boundary. Martyrdom is not a healthy boundary. Okay, understanding the boundaries. You cannot give from an empty well. Slow your pace, because when you slow your pace, you can see clearly what has to be done. And this might be where the trigger might come in, is you might be triggered by all the things that have to get done. This is why you have to start cutting things out, like stop overcommitting yourself to so many different things. Choose what actually matters. And I'm going to go back to slow the pace. What I'm also seeing is the amount of teenagers that are having mental health crises. And what I'm feeling is also the parents' need to overschedule the children with too many things on their plate, and they have no way to play, no way to engage, no way to sit with. And yes, it's all sports, or it's all this and it's all that, but none of it's mindfulness, yoga, learning how to honor their own voice and sovereignty. That could be a real gift we give our children. Choosing what really matters. Choosing what really matters. And it doesn't mean I have to have a house, because that goes into, again, capitalist colonizer structures. And the gluttony is what has gotten us here. The overtaking of resources is what has gotten us here. Stabilizing our nervous system so we know how to respond and support others and support our community, support the environment, and to know how to move forward clearly is important. Honoring the grief, the endings, the completions is important. Creating space for what wants to emerge in early 2026. Again, cleaning out that energy, right? And so, as I'm sitting here and we're getting ready to close, I want to affirm for you that are listening, if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for sticking all the way to the end. I want to affirm your resilience and your wisdom. It's just, which lens do we filter the information through? And that's the work we have to do and continue to do. And I invite you for a moment of presence, taking a breath and just feeling, and maybe just go, but put your hand here and just go, or maybe the M is better, to feel the vibration that's being rippled out. When you can feel that, it sounds so simple, we say we know it, but sometimes we have to be reminded of the basics and ground and just feel the connection that all three bodies, the mental body, the emotional body, the physical body, and the spiritual body, are all independent yet interdependent of each other. They carry their own individual wisdom and guidance, their own triggers, their own traumas, their own work. So this is the multiplexity of it all. Because we say mind, body, spirit, but I really don't know if we really know what that means. And if that's a topic you would like me to do for a future podcast, please leave a comment below. And if you feel like you would like me to elaborate on anything here for future podcasts, please elaborate in the comments below. That's really super helpful. I would also suggest, be a good neighbor, offer support, be nice. Check on your elderly. The elderly are being hugely impacted right now with healthcare issues, the discrimination that's happening in healthcare with elders, the food scarcity. A lot of them are alone. They're afraid of losing their independence. And you have to remember, someday we will be them. And we can either be the person that ignores the elder and therefore we are the elder that will be ignored, or we will be the person that supports an elder through friendship, through support, through help, so they can maintain their independence and recognize that someday, hopefully, we paid it through karma, through our karma connections and our dharma, that we will have somebody that will equally take care of us when it comes our time. Because if we don't take care of our elderly, don't expect others to take care of us when it comes our time. What happens in this circle happens to us. What happens to us happens to the circle, right? And so that's really, really important. I am here to support you, whether through, we have classes, we have other practitioners that are in this space. We have the medicine for the wise woman coming up in January. We have the Buffalo Medicine Drum. We have 3 spots left for that coming up in February. We have Living Life as a Prayer with my Indigenous friend coming in March. And so we have beautiful offerings. Please sign up to our email list. Links are all going to be below. Join us in circles. We do run a monthly women's support group and healing circle every month. Please join us. And may you shed what no longer serves you. May your discernment sharpen. May your presence anchor you. And may you walk into 2026 rooted in truth, guided by wisdom of your body and your ancestors. And that is my prayer for you. And if you liked this episode, please support us with donations. We are not commercialized. Please join us on Patreon. Membership starts for free. Help support especially our domestic violence work and our advocacy work. And yeah, please share this episode if it resonated. Maybe the work that we do, we talk about, and I'm blanking on these words all of a sudden. This is the brain trauma injury that I have. But reciprocity, there we go. I was thinking about that. I was always taught out of reciprocity. If you liked this, please leave a review. Please share. Please leave a comment. These are acts of reciprocity that would be very welcomed. It's even exchange, and that would be greatly appreciated. And then until next time, have a great day and be kind. Again, take what you need, leave what you don't, compost it, and be kind to others. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time.